Clinical psychologists perform essential functions in today's society. They conduct psychological research that furthers the benefits of mental health services. They expand our understanding of the human condition, and they provide crucial clinical services to individuals that are suffering with mental health disorders. In 2019, the National Institute of Mental Health reported that 1 in 5 Americans deal with mental health disorders. That means that currently 51.5 million Americans are managing mild to severe mental health disorders. Now, many of us have, at certain points in our life, felt low or maybe even depressed. However, there is a strong possibility that someone who manages deep feelings of dread, despair, delusion, and dissociation on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, and week-to-week basis may exist within your social circle. Psychologists play a crucial role in today's ever-evolving society. Their role today focuses on reducing the negative stigmatization of individuals with mental health disorders, as well as expanding that care to marginalized communities, such as the deaf community. The field of psychology is very broad, and there are many avenues to entry. To become a clinical psychologist, one must obtain one of 2 doctorate degrees. Those who decide to become a psychologist have a major responsibility in reducing the negative stigmatization of individuals that have mental health disorders, as well as expanding the cultural understanding to other practitioners in the mental health field of how the culture of deaf people is different from the culture of hearing people. Becoming a psychologist requires one of 2 doctoral degrees. Those who decide to pursue a PhD would be known as a Doctor of Philosophy, and typically people who enroll in those programs are more focused on research and education. Now, somebody who decides to pursue the other doctoral degree, which is known as a PsyD, would focus more on clinical practice. Now, Dr. Sarah Kuether wrote an article for the website ThoughtCo titled "The Meaning and Significance of the PsyD" in 2019 on March 24th. In this article, she explains the meaning and the significance of what a PsyD is. And she says that if you choose the PsyD, your ultimate goal should be to practice. If you see yourself conducting therapy throughout your career, or perhaps becoming an administrator in a mental health setting, you should choose the PsyD. So after exploring the differences of which degrees allow a person to become a clinical psychologist, we will now explore one of the most important roles that a clinical psychologist has in today's society: reducing the negative stigmatization of individuals with mental health disorders. A large portion of society views people with mental health disorders negatively. Now, in 2014, esteemed researchers Angela Preskepe and Leopoldo Cabasa conducted a literature review to try and find out how Americans, specifically Americans, viewed individuals who have mental health disorders. Now, for the purposes of their research, they defined a stigma as a set of a set of negative attitudes and beliefs that motivate individuals to fear, reject, avoid, and discriminate against people with mental illness. Their findings showed that most Americans view people with a mental health disorder as dangerous, incompetent, and shameful. So psychologists have an important role of trying to reduce this stigma. So researchers Stefania Monarini and Alessandro Rossi took to finding a way to reduce this stigma. And they figured that taking a biogenetic approach, which basically means educating people that mental illness is an illness and not a moral failing, that they would be able to reduce the overall negative stigmatization of people with mental health disorders. Now, the results of their research actually provided interesting outcomes. They found that the results were very mixed, and that most individuals express a higher need for access to mental health services, but most of those people viewed those with mental health disorders with more negative stigmatization than they did prior to being educated. Very interesting. Now, addressing the stigma around mental illness is incredibly important, and although there is not a clear path on how we should do it, there is a group of people that are significantly more marginalized in the practice of mental health medicine than other groups, and that is the deaf community. And although many may not know this and understand this, the cultural understanding between deaf individuals and hearing individuals are vast, very, very different. And even people who use ASL, which is American Sign Language, a language that's based in English, the understanding of the languages is completely different from one side to the other. Written ASL is very broken and fragmented to somebody who is used to reading, writing, and speaking English clearly. They don't put their sentences together the same way that a hearing person who speaks English would. They also tend to be much more emotive and expressive than people who are hearing. Now, Dr. Britt Littman, in 2021, who is a practicing psychologist in New York, wrote an article for NYU, New York University, and said the following: "With the limited understanding that many Americans have about deafness, it is no wonder that the literature on psychiatric diagnosis of deaf individuals expresses concern about inaccurate diagnoses. In fact, psychotic disorders, developmental disorders, mental retardation are overdiagnosed among deaf psychiatric patients, while other illnesses, such as mood or personality disorders, are less frequently recorded," meaning they are completely ignored. Clinical psychologists, as we have explored, cover a broad area of study and practice. Today, our society continues to expand rapidly, and there is a larger demand for understanding and the development of mental health resources. These highly trained and educated specialists are needed to help reduce the negative view of mental illness in the US and in the rest of the world, and to bring a cultural understanding of deaf individuals to the larger medical community. And although we have all at times felt down or upset, there are those who feel helpless and lost at times, and those people deserve to be heard, regardless of the circumstances. Thank you.